Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini, Italy's dictator, met one of the most dramatic ends in history. In 1943, his own government removed him from power and arrested him. However, Germany intervened, rescued Mussolini, and made him the puppet leader of a small area in northern Italy known as the Republic of Salo. By 1945, the situation had drastically changed. Italian partisans, supported by the Allied forces, were advancing into northern Italy, and the collapse of the Republic of Salo was imminent. Mussolini and his mistress, Clara Petacci, decided to flee to Switzerland. From there, they planned to make their way to Spain, where Franco, a fascist dictator, was still in power. However, just 2 days later, near Lake Como, they were intercepted by communist partisans known as Valerio and Bellini. Police Commissioner Urbano Lazzaro identified them. According to a previously signed document, Mussolini was to be handed over to the United Nations, but the next day, Mussolini and Petacci were executed. The shooting took place in the village of Giulino de Mezzegra and was led by a partisan leader whose identity is still debated, though most believe it was Walter Audisio. On April 29, 1945, the bodies of Mussolini and Petacci were loaded into a van and transported to Milan. There, they were dumped in Piazza Loreto, where they were subjected to abuse and desecration before being hung upside down from the roof of a service station. Civilians gathered below and threw stones at the bodies. Nicolae Ceaușescu. Nicolae Ceaușescu's communist government in Romania, considered one of the most oppressive in the Eastern Bloc, faced a brutal end in 1989. The Romanian Revolution, a popular uprising against the communist regime, was in full swing. The final catalyst came on December 17th, when police and military forces opened fire on an anti-government demonstration. By December 20th, despite strict censorship, word of the unrest spread through word-of-mouth and anti-communist radio broadcasts. Ceaușescu decided to hold a mass rally the next day, December 21st, in what is now Revolution Square. Initially, it seemed like just another of his speeches, where he blamed previous riots on fascist agitators seeking to undermine socialism. However, Ceaușescu had misjudged the crowd's mood. About 8 minutes into his speech, people began booing and shouting. He attempted to calm them by raising his right hand and calling for silence, and order was briefly restored. Eventually, however, he lost control of the crowd and retreated inside the building. Bucharest erupted in open revolt, but the military quickly regained control, clearing the streets by midnight and arresting hundreds. By the next morning, the rebellion had spread to all major cities. Vasile Milea, Ceaușescu's defense minister, seemingly took his own life, though some believed he was murdered. Almost all the soldiers switched sides and joined the revolution. Ceaușescu made a last desperate attempt to address the crowd gathered in front of the Central Committee building, but people began throwing stones and other objects at him, forcing him to retreat inside once more. He and his wife Elena escaped to the roof and fled by helicopter, just seconds ahead of demonstrators who had reached the top floor. However, they were ordered to land by the army, which had restricted all air traffic by that point. The Ceaușescus were detained by police, who reportedly listened to updates on the revolution by radio. On Christmas Day, December 25, 1989, the Ceaușescus were tried by a military court and sentenced to death. Ceaușescu repeatedly denied the court's authority, insisting he was still the legal president of Romania, but it made no difference. The couple was executed by firing squad, riddled with more than 100 bullets in seconds. Hideki Tojo. Hideki Tojo, a prominent figure during World War II, also met a dramatic fate. He was a Japanese general and prime minister of Japan for most of World War II. After Japan's surrender in 1945, Tojo attempted suicide rather than face capture by American forces. He shot himself in the chest, but the attempt was unsuccessful and he was captured alive. He was subsequently put on trial for war crimes by the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. Despite claiming he was just following orders, Tojo was found guilty and sentenced to death. He was hanged on December 23, 1948, along with 6 other Japanese officials, in Sugamo Prison in Tokyo. His execution marked the end of a controversial figure who bore significant responsibility for Japan's actions during World War II. Kim Jong-il. In the late 2000s, speculation about Kim Jong-il's health was rampant. Some reports even claimed he had passed away years earlier, with body doubles taking his place. The rumors gained traction due to his absences from public events, such as the 2008 Olympic torch relay in Pyongyang. In September 2008, Kim's absence from a major military parade led U.S. intelligence to believe he may have suffered a stroke. North Korean media remained largely silent, but behind the scenes, the situation appeared serious. Japanese and South Korean sources reported that Kim had collapsed, was partially paralyzed, and required the assistance of foreign doctors. At one point, North Korea instructed all its diplomats to remain near their embassies, possibly anticipating an important announcement. Despite the ongoing speculation, North Korea released photos and videos purportedly showing Kim in good health, but analysts remained skeptical. Some reports suggested he had suffered a second stroke. Nevertheless, he managed to maintain his grip on power, continued to appear in public, and even made several foreign trips in 2010 and 2011, including visits to China and Russia, often accompanied by his youngest son, Kim Jong-un. This led to speculation that he was preparing his son as his successor. Then, on December 17, 2011, North Korean state media announced Kim Jong-il's death, citing a suspected heart attack while traveling by train. The announcement was accompanied by dramatic claims. A snowstorm reportedly paused, the sky glowed red over Mount Paektu, and ice on a sacred lake cracked so loudly it shook heaven and earth, according to North Korean media. Following his death, Kim Jong-il was posthumously declared North Korea's eternal leader. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin, a highly influential figure in Soviet Russia, also met a controversial end. In the early morning of March 1, 1953, Stalin was discovered unconscious in his residence. Although he suffered a stroke, his body was not found immediately. He had a stroke which went untreated. This delay in the search for help may have contributed to the situation. His inner circle, fearing the consequences of appearing to question his authority, hesitated to act quickly or seek medical help. He remained in this state for several days before passing away on March 5, 1953. The official cause of death was a cerebral hemorrhage. The circumstances surrounding Stalin's death remain a subject of speculation and debate. Some theories suggest foul play, while others point to a combination of factors, including his failing health, the political climate, and the hesitancy of those around him. His death marked the end of an era and had significant consequences for the Soviet Union and the global political landscape. Pol Pot. In the late 1990s, Pol Pot, the leader behind Cambodia's brutal Khmer Rouge regime, faced increasing challenges. In June 1997, he orchestrated the assassination of his longtime comrade Sun Sen, along with 13 of Sen's family members and aides. Pol Pot later claimed he didn't order all of the killings, but by that point, trust within the Khmer Rouge was virtually non-existent. One of the top commanders, Ta Mok, believing he might be Pol Pot's next target, made the first move. He rallied his loyal troops, accused Pol Pot of betraying their cause, and forced him to flee. By this time, Pol Pot was so weak he had to be carried. However, he did not get far. Ta Mok's troops captured him and placed him under house arrest. While confined, Pol Pot gave his final interview to American journalist Nate Thayer. He claimed his conscience was clear and insisted he acted for his country, not for power. He downplayed the genocide, stating that millions was too high a number. In July, Khmer Rouge leaders held a meeting and publicly sentenced Pol Pot to life in prison. However, on April 15, 1998, Pol Pot died in his sleep. Officially, his death was attributed to a heart attack. However, those who were present at the time believed Pol Pot had taken his own life with a combination of Valium and chloroquine immediately after learning that Ta Mok planned to hand him over to the U.S. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, accused by George W. Bush of possessing weapons of mass destruction, saw his country, Iraq, invaded by a U.S.-led coalition in 2003. Within 3 weeks of the invasion, the Iraqi government and military had collapsed, and by early April, coalition forces occupied much of the country. The fall of Baghdad to U.S.-led forces on April 9th, symbolized by the toppling of Saddam's statue, signaled the complete overthrow of his regime, and his whereabouts were unknown. To assist in capturing regime officials, the U.S. military issued a deck of most wanted Iraqi playing cards, with Saddam as the ace of spades and his sons as other high-ranking cards. Bounties were also placed on their heads, $25 million for Saddam himself. He remained in hiding until December, when a soldier noticed a rope partially buried near a small hut. Pulling the rope revealed a styrofoam-covered trap door leading to a spider hole. Saddam Hussein emerged and surrendered, reportedly stating, "My name is Saddam Hussein. Spain. I am the president of Iraq and I want to negotiate. He was arrested and held at U.S. military bases until November 5, 2006, when he was found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to death by hanging, despite requesting to be executed by firing squad, arguing it was more fitting given his position as commander-in-chief. His request was denied. Saddam was executed by hanging on December 30, 2006, and the footage was leaked online from a secretly recorded cell phone video. Franco. By the 1970s, Francisco Franco, the long-reigning dictator of Spain, was visibly nearing the end of his life. He had already begun preparations for the future, officially designating Prince Juan Carlos as his successor in 1969. After a prolonged illness, Franco died on November 20, 1975, at the age of 82. The date carried symbolic weight, as it was the 39th anniversary of the death of José Antonio Primo de Rivera, the founder of the fascist Falange movement. Some accounts even suggest Franco may have passed away the evening before, on the 19th, with the official announcement coming later. Juan Carlos was officially proclaimed King of Spain, setting the stage for the nation's eventual transition to democracy. Over 4 decades after his funeral in 2019, Spain's socialist government ordered his exhumation. The rationale was that only victims of the Civil War should be interred in the Valley of the Fallen, and keeping Franco there was considered deeply disrespectful to those buried alongside him. His family objected, but the government designated Mingarubio Cemetery in El Pardo as his final resting place. Since he was barred from using the Spanish flag, Franco's grandson draped the coffin in a nationalist flag.
I don't think you'll be able to click on the next video until time runs out. 3, 2, 1, you're lost.